And tonight we're going to be talking about just a core missing ingredient for so many of us. I have had the pleasure of talking a lot with some of our top brand executive clients where we're working with them on really cultivating their personal brand and building content on the back end that really reflects who they are based on our knowing process, and really diving deep into just the core tenets of them as individuals and pulling forth the stories predicated on the why they lead particular ways, why they show up in particular ways, why they even chose the profession that they did. And every single one of us has a proprietary brand, which is effectively our very lives. It's you and me. It's who we are. And if we're not stewarding that with such great intentionality, with such great insight, where we're doing the work, we're actually becoming aware and awake to every single part of us, we're going to be living on autopilot. We're effectively going to be living someone else's life that was handed to us, whether it's through generations or by way of mirroring those around us. And so it's so important that intentionality and insight meet together to inform our own awareness, and then also everything thereafter, right? Because that's part of the knowing process, is that we come to know who we are, and then that impacts the change as a kind of almost like a natural output. So the knowing is effectively the input, allowing for the gestation to really understand, okay, what's going on inside, and then that informs the output for every single one of us. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking with a number of executives and working with them, with my team, to create content and just really kind of tap into who are each one of these individuals, and what's their why, what are the core stories, and what are their core values. And one of the things that has really been illuminated for me over the last couple of weeks is this value of relationships. Every single one of them has invested so much into the leadership team around them, in their employees, in also whether they're the founder of the business or the co-founder, and they've got other partners along with them, or even one of our clients works with leaders. I have been seeing time and time again in consecutive order for the last couple of weeks how incredibly important it is, the lateral relationships in our lives. And so, as I've been kind of musing on this, let's put that to the side, I got into the hot tub with my sisters tonight. For those of you who don't know, I am on a cruise with my sisters and my parents, sailing the Mediterranean Sea, and it's been so wonderful. I told one of my sisters today, I was like, man, I wish they gave breaks in between days, because I'm like, what just happened? That was the most magical, wonderful day. And then the next morning we wake up and it's another magical, wonderful day. And it's just so fun. And I booked my ticket a week before we left. I just was looking at their itinerary and looking at the fact that I wasn't going to be going with them. And I realized that I would always regret it if I didn't go. And so I made a last minute decision and went. And there's something really helpful when it comes to, saying at the very beginning, working with leaders to understand their why, understand their core stories that manifest and show up in the way that they lead their teams. It's also understanding, okay, well, what's your vision? What is your ideal? What's your ideal in terms of your relationship with these people? Who do you want to show up as? And so I was actually doing this exercise for myself. I was considering, what would the eulogy be that I would want them to say about me if I was to die tomorrow? And I realized, specifically actually with my mom and dad, I realized I want to keep in my ideal with them is to effectively continue to be investing in relationship with them and to not miss any key highlights or key moments in their life. And this is their first time going to Europe. It was such a big bucket list item. And I just knew, I was like, I will always regret not being there to see their faces when they experience the Colosseum, when they go to Malta. We were in Malta today, and it was amazing. And I just knew, I was like, that would be a regret. But I only knew that by the very, very specific and ideal for a relationship. Only after what's the OS vision for myself, for my life, for kind of my own ideal, okay, now let me work my way backwards into the individual relationships. And as I've been working with these executives in really understanding their heartbeat, every single one of them, every single one who has been incredibly successful knows the value of relationship, knows the value of cultivating the relationship, of investing, of actually kind of answering that question, even though I don't believe that they're doing it in a conscious way. But who do I want to be in that relationship? And who do I want to be seen as? And this isn't, this is not at all, how do I want to be perceived? I want to look good. It's actually, okay, well, who do I need to be and how do I need to change in order to be the ideal version of the greatest potential for that relationship? And that requires a duality of people coming together in terms of responsibility. And frankly, what's so important, and even as I say this, I'm kind of thinking through this concept of, I need to match my ideal and you do too. And frankly, there's something about being actually at the top in terms of hierarchy of leadership in an organization where I get to come in and say, these are the company values. These are the mission statement, the vision statement. Do you align with this? Great. Now you align with me. I'm going to lead the way, but I'm also going to cultivate you as a leader. And so every single individual that I'm working with at the very, very top, CEOs, founders, co-founders, I'm seeing that every single one of them has this ability to articulate their values, articulate their vision, articulate their own ideal for themselves, and then how that shows up in relationship with other people. And they have an ideal for every single leader in their cohort, in their team. And I find that's been very thought-provoking over the last couple of weeks as I've been cultivating content for them and really helping them come to know who they are in terms of, okay, you've done the inner work. Now, how does that show up online, and how does that actually present itself in a digital space? Y'all, for so many others of us, we haven't done that inner work to know vertically for ourselves what are my core values, my mission statement, my vision statement, and then how does that translate in a horizontal way in terms of the way I lead, in terms of how I show up, what is my ideal in each one of these relationships. Let's say you've got 10 different core leaders of your company. How do I show up with each and every single one of them? Because the reality is every single person is different. And therefore, you've got 10 different relationships. And therefore, you kind of need to consider, okay, who do I want to be in each one of these relationships? I show up differently in a way in every single one of my relationships with my family members. I have 5 brothers and sisters, 2 parents, and half of my siblings have spouses. So there's, a dozen of us that we all interact with. So vertically, I'm the same person, but horizontally in connection and in relationship, I show up in a different way with each person based on who they are, and also based on the ideal relationship that I have in mind for and with that person. So there's different layers of the relationship. I find that almost, okay, knowing who I am vertically, getting vertically aligned, knowing who I am in that regard, understanding my experience in the horizontal with that person, and then understanding who they are, understanding kind of even like the data that has to be in that relationship. And then do they buy in on my values and my mission statement and my vision? And then what is that ideal for the relationship? And have I even presented that in the first place? Because when we're working in a business relationship, it's actually kind of similar in a professional or in a personal one. I was talking actually, this is what I was talking about with my sisters tonight in the hot tub, was we were talking about how we've spent so much of our lives cultivating the IP, or the intellectual intelligence, the IQ, not IP, developing the intellectual intelligence. We've spent so many, for some of us, 2 decades spending so much time cultivating our intelligence and how do I think, and knowing math and science and understanding data and how numbers work and finances. Yet we spend so little time cultivating what is absolutely critical and necessary for relationship. And every single one of us for the rest of our lives are going to be in relationship. And we will, hopefully, Lord willing, retire from business at some point. So why is it that all of our education, all of our training is going to something that we will effectively retire out of. And this other area of our life that every single one of us experiences every day in business and at home, we have such little training. Imagine if you and I were to have been raised knowing, okay, 1 + 1 = 2. If you have an emotion coming up in you, you actually are to sit with it, ask why, understand it, and then express it in a respectful way. And we all effectively have a rule book for math and a rule book for conflict resolution. Yo, this would change so much if there was emotional intelligence in schools in addition to intellectual intelligence in schools. And I'm looking at these executives, every single one has built empires, and every single one of them has cultivated the ability to be relational. I'm thinking even of a gentleman who was on the Knowing podcast. He's got a 9-figure business lifestyle. He has a number of investors who are looking to him to kind of lead the charge in terms of the way that they spend their money and invest according to what he's seeing in the marketplace. And so he is, he even said this, something along the lines, and this was a number of months ago, so I'm going to do my best to articulate it well. He said that he never set out to be an investor in the first place, yet he's so good at relationships. And people were effectively saying, hey, I see you doing this over here. You're killing it. I trust you. I respect you. Would you do this with my money? And y'all, everything in our lives, for the most part, are predicated on relationships. And even as I say that, I'm thinking about these AI tools and bots that are coming out, where I think it's called the AI companion. And I'm just thinking of how that is going to, at a core level, change relationship dynamics. And I think we're only just starting to see ramifications of that. Relationships are so critically important. And it's in every regard. I think that we've put too much compartmentalization between the personal and professional, and the ones who are really succeeding at life, the ones who are really doing well, the ones who are happy, right? Because when we say succeeding, doing well, what does that even mean? The ones who have KPIs that include an enjoyment of life, a fulfilled sense of purpose and being at the end of the day. Ideally, they've got money in the bank, but either one of those aspects, the sense of fulfillment and a semblance of peace and joy, they're able to end and conclude their day with a sense of both of those. Y'all, they know how to do relationships, and they know how to exist in a consistent way where they're vertically aligned in every single regard in their lives, and their relationships reflect that. And so as as I was thinking, okay, what would I want my dad to say at the end of my life if I was to die tomorrow? What would I want my sister to say at the end of my life if I was to die tomorrow? For each one of those, I actually was able to, by way of asking that question, consider, okay, I actually need to grow in this way. And for one of them, I was like, man, I really, really don't want to take things personally. I really want to let it go. And actually that's been helpful. Even just being on the cruise with them, there's 5 of us, and I'm so used to traveling solo, and it's been such good practice to just let things go and to not take things so seriously. And to Joe Dispenza says this, Dr. Joe Dispenza, he says, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And so I intentionally moved my attention away from things I didn't like and didn't sit and dwell on it. And it's been so peaceful and so wonderful. And it's predicated in that the answer to that question for every single one of us. Who do I want to be? Who do I want to be known as in this specific relationship? And really understanding that until we allow for intentionality and insight to be a driving force, and really almost like an informant, and then also a dictator and formation of the action in terms of the output, we're not ever really truly going to be able to capitalize on the relationships that are in our lives. And I honestly, I'm taking a lesson from this for myself, because I know that even in my own business, there's really beautiful opportunities that are sitting right before me to cultivate leaders, and I actually, for one of the gals on my team, I actually a couple years ago wanted to promote her, and found out that by way of doing that, she was like, I actually love what I'm doing right now. She wasn't motivated by that. And so by way of just really understanding and mastering relationships, we're able to lead so much better person to person, because for other people, man, they might really, really get a kick out of that, and that's exactly what they want. But if we're not taking the time to cultivate the personal, relational aspects with every single person, man, it is going to be to our very detriment, because the growth and expansion of companies, the growth and expansion of our mission and our calling is predicated on us, our own emotional health, but in the health of the relationships around us. It's almost like the strength of the foundation expands in the strength of our relationships. Now we actually have more of a in terms of breadth of a foundation to build on, because we've got people in our corner, and we've got allies, and we've got leaders on our team who are bought into the mission, bought into the values, bought into what it is, man, that I feel, and I know on my heart to be what I'm called to do. And yes, the how is going to change so many times, yet when we know the why, that's what people can buy into. And so if I am so fixated on what everyone else is doing around me, my why becomes incredibly murky. I took 2 weeks in Prince Edward Island just before coming on this cruise. And I almost feel like the effects of it are still lingering. And I'm so grateful. I just eliminated so many inputs during 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And it was really, I mean, it felt like a detox, yes, but it almost felt like a withdrawal. I was like, this is not good, how hard it is to get off of social media. But it wasn't even just social media, y'all. It was even reading books. Like, no external inputs. It was all just, I don't want to, I can't hear from anybody else. I need to hear from within, because I know that if I'm not giving myself the time for my vision to almost like come back, it's coming back or it's coming up. It's like rising up from within me when I don't have the time and space, the mental space, the emotional space, the spiritual space, even the physical space. Like, there's something about, I actually was doing some Pilates and yoga workouts in the mornings, where normally I'm kind of like banging through my workouts every day to get to the next thing. And I just gave myself 40 minutes at 5 a.m. And I was like, wow, like, even just having the physical space to breathe and take up room and not be rushing my physical body, man, it was things unlock within us. My brother said this 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. He was on the Knowing Show, and he just gave this beautiful reflection of how, when our nervous system is actually able to get to a place of stasis, that is when we can actually unlock new revelations. That is when we can learn something new. That is when we can heal. But if our physical body is feeling tight and trapped, or tight and stressed, or tight and anxious, it's never actually going to allow for the breath. And honestly, even doing that right now, it's like, oh my gosh, how many times am I actually breathing fully? A full inhale and a full exhale. How much are we actually truly at a physical stasis of peace? And so, by way of allowing for the detoxification of inputs, it allows for the space for creativity, allows space for our vision to perhaps even be remembered, much less be so clarified and crystallized and taking it to the next level. And then we can receive. We actually now have space to receive from the right people. This past week, or last week, I guess, I had Chris Mercer on the Knowing Show, and he gave me an amazing prompt. I'm fundamentally changing the way that I'm prompting my AI bots. And he talked about experiential prompting, and frankly, we're going to do a part 2, I think, next week, which I'm super excited about, because this is such an important topic. But if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it, because it was it was a very roundabout way of getting there, because frankly, actually the way that we're engaging with these bots has a philosophical approach to it. So everything, and I wasn't even planning to go here, but we're doing it. Every output in our life, every action we take is rooted in a belief. And so effectively what Mercer was saying is that even the way that I program an AI bot, if I am thinking and viewing the world in black and white and shoulds and should nots and good versus bad, I'm going to think, am I giving this a good prompt, rather than allowing for creativity to flow? Because good and bad is a box. It's binary thinking. It's this or that. And so in that box, if we exist in that space, it's so hard to allow for creativity. It's almost effectively impossible, because good and bad is, both of those are the known. I'm declaring, and I've already prejudged what is good and bad. But if I am allowing for creativity, I'm actually moving into the unknown, which I don't know if it's good or bad yet, right? I don't know. I haven't experienced it yet. In hindsight, I could say, oh, maybe that's actually not a good idea. But in order to even be creative in the first place, we have to effectively remove and eliminate the limits and the confines that we're putting on ourselves. And so when we're taking that approach, even in leadership and even in relationship, if we're taking the confines in the box off of, okay, I'm working with this person, they are this way, this is who they are, and I've labeled you, now I'm going to interact with you in that certain way, there's no way for that relationship to be exploding and allowing for the creativity of something new to blossom from it. Because if I don't ever allow, actually, the man I'm seeing right now, every time I talk about it, I like love him. But every time we have some conversations around particular areas where it's like, oh, okay, I used to do that thing and I've grown. And he said this thing to me a couple months ago. He said, allow me to change. I thought that was wildly, like, yes, wildly true, wildly profound. Thank you. Man, that was so helpful, because I need that. We need to allow ourselves to change. We need to allow them to change. We need to allow the leaders in our organization to grow and evolve. But if we put somebody in a box, man, they are never going to be able to break free from that. And then we will never be able to create something new, because we cannot create something new unless we ourselves are new. And so if we are never allowing ourselves or the other person to change, then the mission and the goals that we're all objectively looking at, it's impossible to reach that, because we're working with this old predated data and not allowing it to update as we all change and evolve. And so the just to kind of bring this full circle, the executives that I'm talking to, creating content for, creating kind of like their, okay, we know who you are in the internal. Now, how do you want to express that in the external world? Y'all, it is so mind-blowing. Every single one of them places the highest value on relationships and the cultivation of leaders. I have not, it has not failed me that a single person that I've talked to who is so successful in a holistic, well-rounded way is not also healthy in their emotional relationships at home, just like how they are on the business front. If we're trying to do it alone, we are fundamentally eliminating our ability to have an expansion of impact. Because if we're doing it in isolation or doing it alone, our foundation is small. It's as big as we are. But the more we actually build out from, it was so cool. We went to an archaeological site today. It was 1,800 years older than the Stonehenge and 2,100 years older than the pyramids in the, I forget which pyramids exactly. Y'all, it's wild. The way that they actually built their stones were like layered on top of each other in this like very widespread manner. And I'm thinking of that in terms of relationships. If we're able to expand our nucleus with the incorporation of others, once they know our mission, know our values, know our vision, man, that's going to be a firm foundation. Man, is that going to go far. Guys, we need each other. But It all depends. I can't move out if I don't have a strong nucleus to begin with. I can't add to and expand and build and be creative and move into the unknown if, man, I've just got from a hurling mess of a woman going into the unknown. That's dangerous. So I just, man, and even as I say that's dangerous, I actually think that perhaps even that moving into the unknown could even be the antidote for so many of us who are struggling with moving and breaking free from the past. Maybe it actually is kind of that starting over. So I'm just curious about what I just said and just wanting to make sure that it's right. At least right for right now. I actually really had to, this is so funny. I wonder if perhaps moving into the unknown can even be the antidote to living in that, we were talking about being rigid and living in the box. Perhaps that's actually the very way to break free from it, is just to start doing those little incremental steps to exist in the unknown. Actually, that was one of the biggest things that really brought healing for me, was existing in the discomfort of traveling all the time. In 2022, after my husband left, I went to California and just bought a one-way ticket to explore a business venture with some potential partners, and then flew to New York and explored business partners there. And then I went to New York Fashion Week, and then I went to, all these places around the US, and then spoke overseas, and it just, everything exploded. But it was in the embracing and curiosity of the unknown that actually was the very thing that set me free. So I take that back, what I said a moment ago. I think it's so important that we do the work to cultivate the nucleus, but in so doing, it actually is so, it's almost like it just goes hand in hand with being willing to embrace the unknown. And in that process, the nucleus strengthens and becomes whole and knows what vertical alignment is. And that's so funny. Even as I'm saying that, it's like, man, I can't ever create an ideal without going into the unknown, without, we have to create something new. And in the creating of something new, and in the changing and becoming new ourselves, all of it, it's like that morphing process. It's like water in, water out. As I'm changing, I'm creating something new. And as I'm creating something new, I am becoming new. And so I think that that's just such a blessing, that in the willingness to embrace discomfort, that in and of itself is reprogramming our brain and reprogramming the way that we engage with other people. So the way that I'm judging other people is a reflection of how I judge myself. The way that I'm jealous of other people is a reflection of maybe a core value of mine, or something that I actually really am longing for. Yesterday on the Knowing Show, Monica Levy was on, a recovering therapist, or lawyer, she says, which I think is so cute. And she just has really learned the secret of living in freedom, and she kind of had her come to Jesus moment, let's just say, moving from being a lawyer to actually being a high performance coach. And that was a big breakthrough moment of stopping and eliminating living for other people. And then she had another breakthrough moment when she got breast cancer. And so there's going to be these moments that force us into the unknown, that force us into the exploration of the what ifs, and just allowing for, what if my relationship adjusted a little bit this way? What if I was to allow for myself to adapt and grow in this way? How then would that impact the relationship? So if I am clear on my ideal, then the how and the pathway to get there, man, that is just so clear, or so exciting, because we don't necessarily know what that's going to look like. Even my ideal itself is evolving over time. So as we think about relationships, as we're looking and recognizing, if we're going to take these, let's say, 5 executives that I've been working with over the last couple of months, analyzing their lives, analyzing the way that they're running their businesses, analyzing the advice that they're giving, and the even the content they're creating, so much of that is predicated in relationship building. So if we're going to take a lesson from their book, okay, I need to get really, really clear on my own ideal. I need to get really clear on my, not just for who I want to be, but also my ideal for that relationship, so that I can actually go and be effective in my communication of my own vision, mission, values, and my ideal for that relationship in and of itself. Because in so doing, that actually might be something that can really bring you two together and bring us together, and have that camaraderie and have that joint. All of a sudden it's a joint vision and a joint mission. And y'all, that's what brings us back. That's what breeds retention, both in a romantic relationship and otherwise. Allowing for the change and the cultivation predicated in, this is the joint and aligned vision and mission and values of who it is that we are. I am so excited. I am going to be hosting a series of workshops actually, at the end of this month into and through Q4, because frankly, all of the content that I've created pretty much ever has been just on my social channels or on and for other companies and other businesses for their certification programs, for their speaking conferences. And I'm just excited to offer something more custom and very much more so intentional, for you all. So October 30th at noon Eastern is the very first workshop. And that really is one that we're going inward, and we're really identifying what are your vision, mission, values, because that is the foundation of your brand. And then November, we're diving a little bit more so into, okay, what does that actually look like on the horizontal side of things? Because if we don't know how to translate that aspect, I said earlier our IP, and earlier I said as well your proprietary brand. Each one of us has intellectual property. Every single one of us has a proprietary brand. But if we're not tapping in and knowing that, then we're going to look and sound just like everybody else, and there's no differentiation. And so if we want to be able to lead from a place where our relationships truly are strong, we ourselves need to be strong first. So that's the focus of the October 30th workshop. The second is, okay, now let's look laterally and horizontally and see, what would it look like to really kind of strengthen those. And then the last one, December, I'm really excited about this one. We're going to be kind of mapping out the roadmap for 2026 based on who you are, who you want to be, your ideal for both yourself and for your business, because the business is just the output. I've really been sitting with this over the last couple of weeks. And frankly, that's where the time and space I gave myself in Prince Edward Island was so helpful. It was like, yeah, I want to help people build legacies. My family has 104-year-old painting business, and that was built by my great grandfather. He has fed so many people, provided for so many families. He's created a real legacy, and every single one of us has the power and potential to do that. And the question is, are we doing it well? Because the reality is every single one of us are already doing that. We're creating legacy now. Every single day, every single moment, every single decision, we're creating legacy. And so what is it? Am I doing it well? Am I doing it with intention and with insight to allow then for the action necessary to meet my ideal, to meet the targets that I'm espousing, but are my actions actually aligning to get me to that place? And so this is the core focus of these 3 workshops throughout the next 3 months. And y'all, there's a lot more coming, which I'm so excited for. And I'm just honestly taking my time, and I want to do it well, and also be brave, because I know the impact of this. And I know that I have needed and still do need to have some mental shifts surrounding the way that I'm presenting offers, in terms of, I know that this is so important, and I know that the right people need it. And I'm so excited. And I just, man, it's exciting to actually put something together, because I've been so focused on delivering just business services in terms of the brand output, but never focusing on the input, who you are. And so now we're really blending that, and we're really focused on the integration of how brand visibility is the output, but you need to actually have knowing as your input first and foremost. And so from this place, these 3 webinars are going to take place. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat, but send me a DM if you want to attend. I would love to have you. 12 o'clock Eastern, October 30th, November 20th, December 18th. So with that, I am so grateful for each